today's webinar, which is on the latest developments in contact centers. My name is Charlie, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, and two great presentations to bring to you, and two great speakers who I will introduce to you in a moment. And actually, I'll do that right now. And the first speaker is Martin Dukes today. How are you doing, Martin?
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much, Charlie, for inviting me today.
No problem. It's great to have you on. Can you, for those people that are just joining us, can you maybe give them a bit of a background as to your role within the industry?
Yes, I've been working as a consultant in the contact center industry for over 20 years. Worked with Sabio nearly 20 years ago. So we've got a long-term relationship. And I've been helping organizations to either improve their business performance, their service delivery, and enhance their service offering, transform what they're doing, and support them in operational management.
Excellent stuff, and lots of really interesting insights you have for us on the future of the contact center industry, which we're really looking forward to, as does our next presenter, who is Stuart Dorman from Sabio. How are you doing today, Stuart?
Great, thanks Charlie, very good, great to be here, thank you.
Excellent. And for everybody, again, who's just joining us, can you give us a little bit more background into kind of your role at Sabio and within the industry?
Sure, yeah, so I'm Chief Innovation Officer at Sabio, and I look after our AI and emerging technology practice. I've been at Sabio since it was a startup. You know, we're a large and fast growing organization now, but very much focused around helping our clients to deliver brilliant service using technology. So really passionate about technology and how it can be used to improve customer service.
Excellent. And I know you have 5 really interesting strategies to present to our viewers today. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing both of those presentations. And there'll be a lot for everybody to watch and keep up with today. So if you want to catch up with the replay later and download both speakers' slides, they'll be available later this afternoon for everybody to see at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And just a reminder to everybody that we really like to make these webinars as interactive as possible. So it'd be great if you could go into the chat room and send in your tips and questions for our panelists, which you can do by following this link, www.callcenterhelper.com/chat. Or if you fancy a little bit less of a challenge, there's also a quicker link, which is cch.chat. And what I like to do when I'm in the chat room is to download both speakers' slides, which you can do by following that link in the top right-hand side. And obviously, you can type in your tips and questions, and also you can join our quiz by simply following these buttons at the bottom left of your screen. But I'll come back to that after Martin's presentation. And also, I think it's really great practice to have the webinar on one side of my screen, if possible, and the chat room on the other, just because I really like to keep up to date with all the information that's coming in from both the chat room and from our speakers' presentations. So that's just a little tip for everybody watching there. And we also like a good giveaway. So please keep an eye out for your chance for a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates, which you can win by sending in the best tip to the chat room, and also by winning our quiz. So yeah, pays to be in the chat room. But now that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Martin, who will share his presentation. Excellent.
So thank you, Charlie, once again, and hello everybody. Thank you for joining and spending a little bit of time listening to some views. I want to talk about what I believe are the latest contact center or developments in the contact center industry, but to put them into some context first of all. So, as we all know, 2020 has been a year of significant change, and in particular within contact centers and customer service. I've never seen a year like it, and I was in a meeting last night where somebody described 4 years of progress taking place in 4 months, which is probably very true. So we've seen enormous change, and that's the context that we're operating in, because a number of people like myself did predictions towards the end of last year about what would happen in 2020, and none of us got them. None of us predicted COVID-19 or the implications it would have at all. So really interesting times. And what we've seen in that area is some really significant changes. So we've seen, office closures, we've seen technology really come to the forefront to support those office closures and some virtual working. So some real changes in service delivery and the way that service is delivered, which in itself has developed a sort of a change in culture, both for customers and for users and advisors themselves, and a new customer experience for many. So enormous change. And one of the challenges I'd like to, and if anybody would like to sort of go in the chat room and make any comments to this, I've struggled to think of any organisation that hasn't been impacted by COVID-19. So I'd be interested if anybody has any views of and can make me think differently around that. If I think about the stage of development in more recent times, when COVID came along, certainly for most people in the UK, towards the end of March, middle to the end of March, and immediately we were into a strategy of trying to cope and understand what the implications were and how we were going to cope with that situation, which I think we did very well. Most people did remarkably well at that. We then became established into an operating model that has sustained itself for some time. And I think where we're getting to now is the time to start reviewing that and thinking more clearly around, is this the right model for us? So I think we sort of struggled along for quite a while and done really, really well, but now's the time to think about that review. And one of the starting points of that is thinking, is the current mode of working sustainable? So if I think about customers generally and the acceptance levels of customers, I hear lots of situations where people are becoming a little bit fed up and irritated with the excuse of COVID. So we can't handle your call because of COVID. Well, people want to understand why, and it's not really acceptable. There's something I'm dealing with at the moment that's taken far too long, and the reason because of that is COVID. Well, actually, people have known about it for some time and haven't really coped with it that well. We then start looking at home working, and the majority of people that I know have been working from home for some time now. Some of those have done really well. Some of them are really enjoying working at home, but I don't think that all homes are suitable. I don't think home working is suitable for everybody. And I don't think the environments that people have at home are suitable. You don't always buy your house with the idea of working from home. And a lot of people haven't done that. So there are a couple of things there to think about. And then there's the thing about socialization and whether your team members actually need to be working closely and socializing with people. And I feel from talking to advisors and agents more recently, that's something that's been missed. And with that, we come a resultant lack of team working in many areas. So some quite big things to think about there. And then, of course, we've got the whole business environment, which is changing. So lots of organizations. So if we take, for example, a restaurant, they've had to completely change their offering in many cases. They've had to reduce the number of seats, reduce menus, change their opening hours, lots of different changes in products and services. And we need to sort of consider that moving forward. And of course, some products are no longer appropriate. They were well used previously, but they've really expired through the changing environment we're in. And if I think about the interesting times that we're in, we see that a grid here, where on the left we've got sort of an operating model with two types of operations. So we've got a virtual operation where people are working from home or remote offices, and an office-based operation. And across the bottom of the scale of this grid, we've got three different areas there. We've got survival for organizations that are simply trying to just keep going as long as they can. For others that are trying to maintain their position in the market, and then others that are really seeing some growth, which in itself brings some further problems. How do they cope with that growth? And one of the interesting things to me is that if you look at that, you then start to overlay that grid with different images, different layers, and you talk about different products and services, different customers' needs, the financial position of an organization, the need for process change, and the need for different people perhaps doing different things. And we can start to see the complexity in how we need to think about changing our contact centres and customer service generally. It's a really complex place to be in. So where do we go from here? Well, as I alluded to before, we've got some organisations, some clients that I have that are really struggling to deliver for a variety of reasons. It may well be that the market has disappeared. It may well be that they're struggling to to keep people employed gainfully. There's not enough work for them, but there's a real pressure for them to deliver and to keep delivering. At the other end of the spectrum, we see some organisations that have completely been inundated with additional business. So I spoke to somebody recently who was involved in the garden centre, the garden sector, and they were saying that they've been completely overwhelmed with the additional work that they've had, and they haven't been able to cope with it. So we've got different problems for different organisations, and I think it goes back to that same old thing. Whereas there isn't one size fits all in contact centres development. So some organisations need to think about actually just we stay exactly as we are in terms of how we're working. So if we've got people working from home, this is what we're going to go forward with doing for a while or for a longer term. Are we going to change? Are we going to do something completely different? Or are we going to revert back to how we were before? And these are quite interesting considerations for organisations, and there's pros and cons with each of those. Some real big considerations there. And if I just hand back to Charlie briefly for the first poll this afternoon.
Excellent. Yeah, great. Thanks. Thanks for that, Martin. I'll just launch the poll for everybody now. And the question is, what is the main focus for your contact center in the next 12 months? So you have advisor motivation and happiness, CSAT with service offering, introducing new technology, process changes, and increasing efficiency. Interestingly, I mean, your main focus might not be included in that list. If it's not, if you could just write that into the chat room. That'd be really great to know, but I can see lots of people are voting now, so I'll leave a couple more moments before I close the poll. It's very interesting to see these results, and I'll share them with you now. So yeah, surprisingly, advisor motivation is at 4%, CSAT with their service offering is 24%, introducing new technology is 39%. I suppose that one might help hit other goals that I mentioned in this list too. 16% say process changes, and 18% say increasing efficiency. Is this kind of what you're expecting, Martin?
I think so, based on the previous answers in terms of what are the challenges for people, and introducing new technology became apparent that was the most common one. So yes, it's I'm always a little bit wary around introducing new technology being an answer, because there's so much that sits behind that. So there has to be a purpose for that technology, and there has to be a reason for it. But and as you say, it may well be to support increasing efficiency. It may well be to improve CSAT.
Excellent, great. I'll stop sharing those and pass back to you, Martin.
Thank you. So just going back to the previous slide where I had the three options about whether to stay as you are, to move forward, or to revert to where you were before. When we start thinking about designing a new contact centre, these are some of the things that we think about. So we start at the left-hand side at the top and think, well, what are the objectives and the purpose of the centre? And then look at whether there's a business case, what experience we want to deliver, and all of those different things that go towards designing and developing a new contact centre. And I think whichever option you're going through, I think it's a valid thing to do some of those things at the moment, particularly if you're looking to change and set a new operating model in place. What's fundamental for me is designing around the customer experience. So we developed something, we put together this little diagram probably about 2 or 3 years ago, which is sort of illustrating how we would start to design a new contact center. So we'd start with the customer experience and then go around place people, etc. And you can see most of the things that you'd expect there. What's interesting nowadays is how the last 6 months has seen some quite fundamental changes. So if we have a look onto the right-hand side, we now see that process and knowledge is becoming more and more important. And predominantly because people want to be able to self-serve. There's a need for greater use of knowledge and information to be able to support advisors and customers. So hence we also see that technology has moved forward in the list of what considerations that we make. An interesting place has reduced quite significantly, again, because of what's happened and experiences what's happened. So I believe that customer expectations have changed over the last few months, and from certainly a little bit of research I did recently with customers, this was true. So customers are doing things differently now. So there's a a real increase in online shopping. We're seeing people having telephone consultations with doctors and physicians and medical people, which didn't happen as much as it perhaps could have done before. And people, of course, have their individual preferences for how they want to work and how they operate. And maybe the choices that they've had, or the restriction choices of more recent months have encouraged those preferences. There's certainly been an increasing adoption of technology. So some of those choices, some of the choices have been removed in terms of access. You could argue there's been a forced channel shift, and particularly if we look at a lot of retail and a lot of financial services, the face-to-face services that you're getting are no longer as freely available as they used to be. Self-service has increased. And I think one of the most personal views for me is that I would never have considered my 80-year-old mother being involved in using video and looking at the rest of the family and having a conversation before. But COVID has meant that she's learned how to do that, or been supported in doing that. And now she uses that regularly to maintain contact with the family. And maybe she will start to interact with organisations that she's a customer of in the future using video. In terms of looking at the experience that customers have had, well, I think it's been mixed. For some, it's been excellent. Some people have seen a real benefit in the way things have changed, but not for everybody. I think if we look across the world, we see a lot more vulnerability appearing, a lot more mental health cases appearing. Some as a result of COVID, but generally, I think we're in a changing environment. And the other thing in terms of the experience and how organisations relate to customers, at one time we'd have said it's an organisation's responsibility. An organisation should be responsible to its customers. Well, actually, that's starting to change a little bit, particularly as organisations become, or some become a little bit more fragile in terms of their financial position through recent changes. The whole order, process and knowledge I've talked about a little bit previously. So I think there's three main areas that I'd look at there. There's the business process changes. So why are we changing business processes? Well, it's about trying to become more efficient, more effective, and adapting to the changing environment, and a lot more personalisation and orchestrating customer journeys to individual needs and particular needs of different types of customers. Looking at using technology to share knowledge, and I think I've alluded to this a little bit earlier in terms of providing a central source of knowledge that's consistent for both advisors and customers, so that we get to use the same information in multiple ways. And then, of course, we've got operational process change. So with people working in different locations, the challenges of performance management, the challenges of quality management, we've had to make some changes to how we're working. And I think whichever way we decide to move, whether it's stay, change, or revert, we need to consider those operational processes and look to see if they're fit for purpose. Sorry. Technology, I've talked a little bit about technology. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think it's fair to say that we're using different technology now to what we have previously done. So there's a lot more artificial intelligence, chatbots, virtual assistants, self-service, and organisations that I'm working with are all interested in this technology and using it for the right reasons. However, for many of them, they've started projects or they've started developments, and then COVID has come along. But they're in a situation now, well, do they carry on, or do they delay things? Do they stop, or do they push forward? So there's quite a few considerations there. And I think, again, it depends on an organisation's particular development programme and how they're looking to change and their future vision. But technology certainly has a field to a real place in the future. People are I've always talked about people being the main differentiator in customer service. So I think we've seen lots of discussions around how do we look after people. To me, what I'm experiencing with my clients is that they're having to invest more time in supervision and management of people because they're working remotely. So they need a little bit more care. They can't see them as easily. So that's been an increase in overhead. Customers are not always being reasonable, not always being positive. So I think it's fair to say that I've seen some examples of where advisors and anybody in customer service is having a difficult time in dealing with the frustrations of customers and the situation that they find themselves in. So it's really important to look at the well-being of our people, both from a mental and a physical perspective. So going back to the home working and the thought of an advisor working on an ironing board is quite a frightening one, but I'm sure it's happening somewhere. So then looking on to people, it's about the support and the tools that they need. So I believe there's a need for greater, when you're working in an isolated environment or when you're working from home or in a virtual operation, it's important that you get greater feedback. It's important you get more communication and more inclusion, because you can't see things and pick them up and just chat with somebody. So you need to have that forced integration with people and a greater access to knowledge, greater use of information. And the skills that people will need in the future, they will change as well. So particularly at the moment, I believe there's a real opportunity for empathic organisations to forge ahead and really work with their customers in helping them to get through these difficult times. And I would say actually a lot of organisations pay lip service to this and talk about really caring about their customers. I'm not sure all of them are. So the ones that do will have a real advantage. And I think, you know, we talk about people, and I think Stuart talked about it a little bit earlier. It's about having access to knowledge so that they can use that knowledge and develop solutions rather than trying to fix everything in all the detail. It's about knowing where to go to find the answers. We've seen a lot of offices closing, office consolidation. I've seen particular examples where offices are reducing. But I would add that actually the financial decisions to close an office are normally straightforward, but they don't always consider the full picture. So we don't need to have this office. We manage without this office. Let's close it. Let's move out. Let's relocate. Have everybody working from home. We can save a lot of money. But actually, I think that for contact centres, not all of them are great at working from home. It's not, you know, work from home is great, really good, but it's not for everybody. It's not suitable for everybody. An organisation needs to think carefully about how their operation is going to work and think around agile working and hot desking. So then when they come to their office and accommodation strategies, they can incorporate that rather than just having a straightforward, let's close this and move on. So in summary, I think organisations have got enormous decisions to make and developments and opportunities. They need to think about what are the right ones for their particular organisation and make sure they're appropriate to them and to their customers. They need to think about the contact centre strategy and ensure that the service is delivering against the original objectives and the original business case. So I think it's very easy previously to think about either short or long timescales, but now I think it's important to think about all three, short, medium and long, and plan accordingly. Finding out what matters to customers. So we've worked in a real fast-paced, changing environment, and we've had to push services towards customers. Now I think it's a really good opportunity. Now some of those services have settled down to find out what really matters to customers and what do they want now, rather than what we thought they wanted 6 months ago. I always believe designing around their customer experience and finding out what customers really want and being able to shape the services around those is more important now than ever, as it's continuous review. So I think in a fast-paced moving environment, we need to keep on top of things and keep reviewing to make sure that we're adaptable, agile and able to serve customers in the most appropriate manner. So thanks very much for listening. Some contact details there if you need any further help. But any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat room. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Martin. I mean, there were so many really great points there, and I've noted quite a few key takeaways that I'll just share with everybody in a moment. But first of all, we're going to go straight to a quiz now. And while everybody logs into our chat room, I can take you through those. But if you are not yet in the chat room and would like to take part in the quiz, you can visit www.callcenterhelper.com/chat, or more simply cch.chat. chat. What I will say is that there is a bowl of champagne or a box of chocolates for the winner, so definitely worth being in there. And also, if you could just put in a couple of words once you're in the chat room, what you liked best about Martin's presentation, that'd be great, because we always like to hear some positive feedback. And once again, once you're in the chat room, to take part in the quiz, simply use the A, B, C, D buttons that you'll find either at the bottom of your computer screen or the bottom of your mobile phone screen. Excellent, and there's how they correspond. So I'll just wait for everybody to join now while I get the quiz up on my screen. Excellent. So yeah, I'll let everybody filter in. But yeah, some really great points that I took away from your presentation, Martin, was using technology to share knowledge as opposed to just improving processes. I thought that was really great. Your point about how skills will change in the future and that organizations will look to become more empathy and solutions driven. I thought that was really interesting. Your points around finding out what matters most to customers was really great. I know we've spoken about that before and the kind of implications it has for how you can improve your quality scorecards. So I think that's really great. And also there was a really great slide, which unfortunately, because obviously you were constrained by time, you had to kind of flick through, but I'd really encourage everybody to look through your slides where the slide where Martin was talking about reevaluating your contact center strategy. There was some really great stuff in there. So if download this later, but I will stop talking now and let everybody take part in the quiz. So let's go. The first question. And this one is simple, true or false. Over half of staff would like to be working in a hybrid model in 6 months' time. Is it A, true, or B, false? Be an interesting one. See what people go for. I guess every contact center will be different, but be interesting to see the replies here. I'll give everybody a couple more moments to put in their responses before I go to the next one. I'm going to press it. Excellent. Not much time to think there, but I can see most people put that as true, which is great, which is correct. And this actually came from recruitment company Hayes in a report that also revealed that less than a quarter wish to be fully based in the workplace in the future. I think that's a very interesting point that links well with Martin's presentation. So second question, according to contact center professionals, which of the following is the biggest barrier in holding back digital experiences? Is it A, integrating departments, B, integrating people, C, integrating processes, or D, integrating systems? This stat actually came from last year's 2019 annual report from Call Center Helper on what call centers are doing right now, which I'm currently in the middle of writing a 2020 edition with some interesting results. So look out for that one. Slight plug for my survey there. Excellent, and most people getting that one right. Again, great start to this quiz for a lot of you. Yeah, and again, this came from Call Center Helper research with 56.7% have not integrated their contact center systems, which damages their digital customer experience more so than other common problems. I think it'll be interesting to hear Stuart's thoughts on the digital customer experience later. Excellent, we see Dan is in the lead, we're halfway through. And the next question is, what percentage of frontline employees clearly understand the connection between their roles and corporate priorities? Is it A, 16%, B, 36%, C, 56%, or D, 76%? Lots of 6% in there. Excellent. Give everybody a couple more moments to answer that one. I think this is a bit trickier, this one, but let's take a look at the results. Yes, so 9 people were getting that one right, but I think most people were at the right end of that scale. And this is according to Harvard Business Review, where only 16% of frontline employees can link their role to corporate priorities, despite some contact centers aiming to align their center with organizational goals. And I think top marks for anybody that is doing that. And Dave is at the top with 1 question left. Who will win the bottle of champagne or box of chocolates? And it comes down to this question: which famous entrepreneur once said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works"? Ariane, was it A, Ariana Huffington, B, Bill Gates, C, Richard Branson, or D, Steve Jobs? These quote ones are always quite difficult too. But yeah, I'll give everybody a couple more moments. And let's see what everybody said. And yeah, most people getting that one right too. It's very, very great to see. And yeah, another famous Steve Jobs quote is, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean and to make it simple. Excellent. And Dave was the winner of that quiz. So congratulations, Dave. We have a bottle of chocolates, a bottle of champagne, or a box of chocolates ready for you after the webinar today. If I can escape from the screen. There we go. Excellent. Yeah, so thanks everybody for taking part in the quiz. And now we move on to top tips and questions. Let's hear what you've been saying in the chat room. And the first one is a question, and that is, do you feel COVID will help in turning the corner in viewing call centers as revenue centers instead of cost centers? It's quite an interesting one. It kind of links to your presentation, Martin. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yes, I hope. I think it's a really good question. Thanks, Anish. We've been talking about trying to convert call centres into revenue centres for a long time, but I do think that COVID has really been a catalyst for a different mindset. And I think a lot of organisations have started to appreciate the role that a frontline service can play in the whole of that company's success. So yes, I do. I think it will help in the right organisation.
Yeah, I think the right organization point was a very important one there. I think a lot of this COVID situation will have polarized a lot of people's thinking on this anyway. But yeah, great question. And we also have a tip now from Arnish, who says, the more time we can spend agents on empathy, the better it will match your brand promise too. I think that's a very nice point and links well with Martin's points on empathy in the presentation. We also have a question in from Charlie's, who says, what do you think of all calls going first to a triage agent going first to a triage agent first, and they scheduled for agent to work with customer versus ACD delivers calls directly to agents to work with customers? So I don't know, Stuart, what your thoughts are on the kind of triaging.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point, and really this is absolutely square in the middle of the role that we see virtual agents and AI playing today. Answering the call, asking the question, hey, how can I help you today? And then making a decision as to which is the right team or which is the right individual to handle that contact, possibly automating it and not giving the customer an answer straight away, possibly scheduling for some point in the future, but really sitting in front of the call center and acting as that really smart receptionist to be able to handle those types of calls. That's definitely a massive trend that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, I think that can work really well with virtual agents, as you say. Not so much with human agents on the front line, because whenever I get through to human triage, I'm always thinking, why can't I just talk to you and solve my problem? But that's my bias.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my obnoxious customer face on there. But we have another opinion this time that's sent in from Simon, who says, our focus is multifaceted, but broadly bringing outsourced contact centers in-house, introducing new tech and improving CSAT. I think that's quite an interesting set of aims for the future. Good to see some good aims in there. And we have a question sent in by Laura, another one on the pandemic, and that is, are companies surveying their customers more during this pandemic? I don't know if either of you have heard anything about this.
I've heard of some organisations that are surveying less because they're so focused on being able to deliver that service that they haven't got the resource available to either do the surveys or to analyse the results.
Yeah,
that's quite an interesting situation.
Yeah, I've actually heard similar but a lot of brands, instead of surveying so much, are actually switching to speech analytics and looking for drawing kind of insights in a less kind of spammy way can think of the right word there. Are you seeing a lot more organizations switch to speech analytics, Stuart?
Yeah, again, that's another big trend. I mean, to this point here, I think we're encouraging, we're seeing more people looking internally as much as externally and actually worrying about the welfare of their employees and serving staff more to make sure that they're okay working at home. So I think that's really encouraging. But yeah, looking at it from a technology standpoint, we're definitely seeing the ability, the value being seen in the data that exists within the contact center as part of the broader customer journey. And speech analytics is obviously one of the ways of unlocking that, but equally just joining the dots of the whole customer journey and looking at the value that you can extract from that, I think is really, really important at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And one last tip that's come in before I go to your presentation, Stuart, comes in from Kelly. Says empathy for agents can be exhausting, especially when consistently handling negative customers. Rational compassion should be more widely adopted as it allows the agent to connect with the customer but not take on their customer's emotions. I think that's a very interesting point. And I guess, Martin, that links to your point on looking after agent well-being in this time as well, and how brands need to think about that.
Yeah, I think so. It's a real pressure at the moment, and it's become more severe. The concern for agents and advisors during the recent issues that some have faced.
Yeah, I think that's a really great tip from Kelly, and I think it's a good one to end that section on. But before we actually go into Stuart's presentation, I do have a quick poll for everybody, and it would be great if I could get everyone's thoughts on this. And I'll just launch this one for everybody. And this poll question asks, on a scale of 1 to 5, how closely is your contact center involved in digital transformation? So is it 5, we are an integral part; 4, we are closely involved and consulted; 3, we are sometimes involved and consulted; 2, we are informed during the rollout or after; or 1, we're not involved or consulted. I can see lots of answers coming in here. Stuart, what are you expecting here? See?
Based on our experience, I would say that certainly if you look back over the last few years, I would say the contact centre tends to be on the receiving end of those initiatives as opposed to being engaged in them fully. We are starting to see that change, and that's encouraging. But historically, I think the disconnect's been there, and I think it really does need to come together.
Excellent. And let's see if your suspicions are true. And yeah, we are in fact seeing that change. As you were saying, with it's great to see actually 30% saying we're an integral part, and 34%, the largest percentage there, saying we're closely involved or consulted. And I think, as you say, that maybe indicates some great change within the industry. And I think that's a great position. Time for me to stop sharing my slides and let you share your presentation, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly share my screen. Okay, have you got that coming through?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So, I mean, that was a really interesting point, and my focus. I'm going to pick up on some of the points that Martin made around technology in particular, and the transformation, the change that's happened over the last the last 6 months in particular. Now, really, for the last decade or so, we have seen quite a lot of change in digital transformation in the way that people shop. As an example, it was 10 years ago when Sainsbury's, one of our clients, just launched their online shopping grocery store. Before that, the last major innovation in grocery shopping was the invention of the supermarket 50 years ago. And the idea that you could do your weekly shop online was a revelation. And now I go to my app and I do my weekly shop, and it's fundamentally changed the way that most of us go about doing our grocery shopping. The same thing applies to the way that we travel around. Again, sort of a decade ago, the ideas around Uber or booking a train ticket or booking a flight and having my ticket on my phone, or even TripAdvisor, Airbnb, none of these things existed just over a decade ago. But over the last 10 years, they've utterly transformed the way that we go about traveling and booking our holidays. Same principles apply to paying as well. The way that I pay for things now is fundamentally different and has changed massively over the last decade. I can now transfer money to anywhere in the world within a few clicks, secured with a biometric by using my face, for example. It's amazing. I no longer carry cash with me. I can use open banking to help me budget. And I use contactless payments, which really takes the friction out of making payments and gives me more convenience in the way that I go about my daily business. Even the way that we educate ourselves has changed as well. You know, my kids all use Google Classroom to do their homework. They access Wikipedia to get information. There's people like things like the Khan Academy, which is really providing a world-class education to anyone with an internet connection, which is increasing all the time. You know, over the next 5 years, we expect the global masses to jump online and therefore have access to amazing levels of education that, again, just weren't possible 5 or 10 years ago. And alongside that, you know, it was about 10 years ago that we saw the launch of the iPad. And I think some people really underestimate what that did in terms of democratizing technology. Before that, a lot of people were scared of computers. You know, they were quite complicated things. People were reluctant to do anything with them in case they broke them. But all of a sudden, these touch screens and these really simple, contained, closed devices really help people to give them confidence to start to do more and more things online, to engage in e-commerce, and generally just have access to computing, whereas before they would have been afraid to do that. So the simplification of computing driven by these types of devices has really transformed and made computing almost ubiquitous to a generation of people that simply wouldn't access it a year ago. And obviously, you know, 6-7 months ago, is it now, everything suddenly changed when the pandemic hit us. And to Martin's point earlier on, nobody saw this coming. It was a complete, you know, completely unexpected. And clearly it's changed everything. We started hearing news of this virus in China, then it quickly spread to Italy. And then in no time at all, we were all in lockdown, working at home. And, you know, 6 months later, things have eased a bit, but we're looking forward to a winter where things are getting a bit stricter again and we're going back into some form of lockdown. So it really has changed everything in terms of the way we work, the way we socialize. And a lot of those changes are here to stay. Right at the start of the pandemic, we saw these amazing stories, these heroic levels of achievement with this mass shift to home working that seemed to happen, you know, in a matter of days. And I think Martin made a really good point around changes that would have taken many, many years we see happening in a matter of days or weeks in many cases. And I think this has overcome a lot of risk aversion in many organisations, and it's got a lot of people asking, how do we retain this level of urgency that was caused by COVID when things go back to normal? Now, there's no doubt that we still have a lot of work to do to normalise our processes and really help people adapt to home working. But this hybrid model of working is absolutely here to stay. Home working, you know, will be a major part of everything that we all do going forward. And we've just got to get used to it. The technology's got to catch up. Our processes have to catch up because it's here to stay. What we've also seen is this irreversible shift in behaviour. And well, at the start, I talked about the foundations being laid for digital transformation in terms of the way we shop and the way that we educate and the way that we buy things. And really that was available to, you know, early adopters and people that were embracing technology, but there still remained a cohort of our customers that were still wanting to go to the bank to pay that check-in, or perhaps they'd still pick up the phone and speak to the call centre as opposed to trying to solve their problem online. Now those people have really been forced to change their behaviour. They've been forced to communicate with their kids and their grandkids using FaceTime. They've been forced to do their shopping online. They've been forced to go and do their banking online. And even when they go out now, they're being forced to, you know, use contactless payments as opposed to carrying cash with them. So this forced digital behaviour has really happened, and that's really transformed and made, you know, digital engagement available to a much bigger cohort of people. And I always think of it a bit like the classic technology adoption curve, where you've got your innovators and your early adopters and your early majority of people. Like myself, you know, I put myself in that camp. As soon as an app comes out for a company that I engage with, I'll download the app, I'll try it out, I'll try their chatbot, I'll always go online and try and solve my problems. But like I say, there will be this cohort of customers that don't necessarily have the competence or the confidence to be able to go on and engage in these digital channels, engage in messaging. And these late majority or these laggard customers really never would have changed their behaviour had this pandemic not come along and forced them down this route of doing things online. So, but these people are late to the party, but they're now finding actually that it works pretty well for them. They're actually enjoying doing a lot of their shopping online. They're getting used to using Amazon. They're getting used to doing their banking online. So what we've got to make sure now is that we are able to support that cohort of customers when things do go wrong. We need to create that safety net there so that if they do engage online and they get a bit stuck or they need a bit of help, we can step in with the call center with some assistance and really help them to, to solve their problem and give them that confidence to continue their journey in the online domain. And the way that I like to think of this is trying to think of ways in which we can provide a human touch through digital channels. And if you think about in the olden days, if you like, 6 months plus ago, when people used to go into a store, say it was a department store, a really good shopkeeper or really good, retail expert within that department store would constantly be looking around and checking out, is this person, do they need any help? Is this person, they're rifling through a rack here, are they looking for a price or a size of something? This person here, they're just browsing, they're just walking through on their lunch break. They're not going to, I'm not going to waste my time speaking to them because they're just wandering through, killing a bit of time. Or maybe this person over here, I can see they're looking around for the customer service department. So I'm going to step in and point them in the right direction. We need to think about our digital assets and particularly our websites in the same way. We need to use technology to monitor people's behavior online and then bring in the call center, step in if somebody needs help. Now that could be a click to dial, the phone number, it could be a callback, it could be a web chat, it could be a simple chat bot, it could be a bit of content. What we're doing though is using technology to personalize that journey and step in and help and link the website, link digital with contact center. And I suspect this is why we are seeing more of an interest in technology as we saw in some of the polls earlier on, and much more engagement from the contact center in digital journeys, because the contact center itself is now undergoing this digital transformation that we've seen happen in the other digital experiences over the last decade. It's now's the time for the contact center to embrace these technologies and go on that digital transformation journey. So what I'm going to share with you now are just a few ideas as to how we can kickstart that process. And all of these ideas are designed to be relatively simple things, proof of concept, simple experiments that can be run. Normally these can take place over a 6 to 8 week period. And they're all designed really to run some experiments to help you to learn, to test out some new ideas, to gather some data, to see how customers respond, and ultimately to learn from that, to then inform your strategy going forward and help you figure out how you can, carry that digital transformation journey on and engage customers in the way that they want to be, particularly given the pandemic that we're in at the moment. So first of all, we've been doing some really interesting work at Sabio with Google, where we are looking at ways in which we can start to embed customer service, customer experience, right the way up into the Google search. Now, this is accessible either through Google Maps or through the Google Search app on your mobile phone. And if you search for an organization, most of you will have done this before, and you'll see that, historically, Google would have presented a telephone number to you. Now, that's not always a good thing, because most of us really would like the customers to at least try to help themselves on your website before they pick up the phone. But Google, being a marketing company, being focused on driving demand, are often presenting the phone number, and that encourages the customer to pick up the phone. But now what we can do with Google is to start to embed a messaging icon within the search. And if the customer clicks on this, as you saw from the animation, we can then open up a messaging application, front it with a virtual assistant or a chatbot, ask the customer a few questions, and either steer them towards your website where they can get the answer, or potentially escalate through to the right department or the right person within your contact center to help solve that problem. So going right the way up to the call to action, embedding into Google is one of the first things that I'd recommend organizations look at. The second thing, and we talked about this very briefly just now, was looking at ways in which you can start to measure the demand that comes and hits your call center from your website. Now, most people that I've come across will be using technologies like Adobe or maybe Google Analytics, and they'll have a pretty clear picture of how many people are visiting their website. But where the data is missing is then understanding how many of those people then escalate into the call center, either by picking up the phone or engaging in a web chat. It's a really big missing data point that most organizations don't have visibility of. So the first thing that I would suggest you do, and we have a product or a solution that we call Digital Insight, which allows us to deploy either a dynamic phone number or a callback on a website, which allows us to track precisely how many customers filter from the website into the call center. And if you know this information, you can then start to figure out, okay, well, which pages are causing the most demand to be created? Maybe it's a bit of a faulty FAQ or a bit of knowledge that's not performing as it should do. Or maybe the customer's just being lazy and not even bothering to engage in content. Maybe they're just going straight for the phone number and picking up the phone. And if we know all of these things, we can then start to design and optimize the experience accordingly. But the first step is to measure it. So the next thing, again, we touched on this, the next thing is then to use AI and in particular virtual agents to understand why the customer's calling. Now, a lot of people often get quite intimidated by AI. You know, they think it's an incredibly complicated thing. They hear all these terms like machine learning and neural networks and so on. But the reality is it's very simple to get up and running. We've got a process that we can deploy, you know, in a matter of days where we can switch it on, we can filter a few calls through, we can ask the customer, hey, how can I help you? Why are you calling today? And we can very, very quickly train a model and learn why people are calling. And over an 8-week period, that gives us a really, really rich set of data. We can get many, many tens of different reasons why people are calling, which we can then use to triage, we can use to make better routing decisions, we can use to drive automation, or maybe we can try switching them to different channels if it's appropriate. So start small, but deploy very quickly. Think about deploying it on the voice channel, on messaging and on chat. And it's very, very easy to get up and running very quickly with this technology now. I guess the other point as well is that it's much, much more cost effective to do this now. We're seeing people like Amazon and Google enter into the market. It's really democratized the cost of this technology. So the fourth piece that we talk about is escalating. And I think this is particularly important now when most of your customers are at home and they're typically near a screen. And again, what we can do here is switch on the ability for agents to be able to start the conversation on a voice channel, so somebody calls in, but very quickly say to the customer, well, maybe I can send you a text message with a link on it to a web page, or maybe you can go to a website and put in a unique code. That then allows the agent to share content with the customer, much in the way that we're doing now with Zoom or with Teams. We're all used to doing it in the commercial world. Our agents should be able to do it with their customers. And we found this can have a massive impact in terms of improving the level of communications, increasing upsell. You know, it's much, much easier for an agent to explain a complex solution or a complex inquiry by sharing a bit of visual content to the customer alongside what they're trying to explain. It really does help to deliver a better service. So, and again, this is something we can switch on very quickly, very easily, and test out whether it works for your environment. The last thing I'd like to mention is, and this is definitely more of an emerging field, but it's the use of AI to assist agents. And again, I like to think of, you know, the poor agents that are sat at home at the moment on their laptops, they're dealing with customer inquiries. It's really hard for them now to put their hand up and get their supervisor to come over and ask them for a bit of help if they've got a difficult customer or a difficult inquiry on the phone. Now what we're starting to see is the use of AI to listen into those conversations in real time, offer suggestions of knowledge, offer next best actions, maybe detect the sentiment of the customer. If a customer's maybe frustrated or if they're angry, it can send a flag to a supervisor, and we can very quickly alert the supervisor or suggest an action to the agent to help them close the inquiry down. So again, something that we can start to build and test very quickly and very easily. So that's all I've got to say, really. You know, these are the 5 easy experiments you can run today. I'll share the content with you afterwards, but really simple things that you can trial out, you know, in your call centers to try and start to engage in digital transformation and deploy these technologies from the cloud. So please get in touch if you'd like to learn more. Thank you very much.
Excellent, great. Thank you for that, Stuart. Lots of really great points there. Before I kind of again go through my key takeaways, I'm just going to quickly launch a poll for everybody based on the question which you can see on screen there, and that's if you would like to hear more about from Sabio about Stuart's 5 digital strategies. If you could just put yes to that poll. But yeah, lots of really great points there. I mean, providing the human touch through digital, and I really liked your example of kind of the virtual shop assistant as you would have in a everyday shop. I thought that was great. Embedding messaging into Google search, because everybody uses Google now, and I think that's a really good way to kind of get your contacts, your customers going where you want them to go. Tracking demand from your website into the call center was another really interesting point. and a lot of your points at the beginning about forced digital behavior as well. There's lots of really great stuff from both presentations today, so definitely lots for me to take away from. And I saw that the chat room was humming whilst you were going through that, and we have lots of more top tips and questions for both our panelists, so let's just dive straight into those. And our first question comes in from Helen, who on chatbots, and she asks whether you'd pretend customers are talking to a human or make it obvious that they're chatting with a bot. What balance do you strike to get the best uptake and results? I guess you talked a little bit about chatbots. Stuart, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I mean, in our experience, it's always best to be very clear to the customer that they are speaking to an AI. I think we can design the AI, and design is so important here, the way that we ask questions, the language that we use, the intonation that we can build in, etc., is all really important to help the customer feel like they're progressing towards an outcome and to make it feel as natural as possible. But we still always advise that we don't try and kid the customer into thinking they're speaking to a person.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I'm sure we have another really interesting question too coming from Kieran, who says, what tips do you have to try and ensure that onboarding, training and development of a new team member is not slowed down by work from home? I think that's another interesting area. I don't know if you have any tips for this one, Martin.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting area, and I think obviously onboarding and training and development programs will have to adapt to allow for people not coming into the office environment and working, sitting next to people and seeing what they do. So I think there's lots of technology solutions, a lot more video training available than there used to be. But I certainly think it needs to be adapted to make sure that people working at home have something that's both informative and useful, but also interesting.
Yeah, excellent. I'm sure none of that side-by-side learning can happen right now. I don't know if you know of any other tips, maybe similar to what Martin's just suggested there, Stuart.
I think from my perspective, the challenge is about curation of content. I think more and more, and all of us are probably exposed to some really, really great content, whether it be publicly available on YouTube, internally on our knowledge management systems, LinkedIn Learning, all these different places where there's some brilliant people with some brilliant ideas. The challenge is about curating that so that people have a very clear learning path, I think. And that for me is the big challenge, not necessarily the content itself.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea of kind of creating new content. I know one contact center that was strength spotting, looking for advisors' strengths and asking them to kind of present online presentations that all staff could use. And I think it's one of many interesting ideas on that topic. And yeah, very interesting question there from Kieran. And another question now from Deborah also is the turnover of agents higher in the pandemic? I don't know if either of you have seen any of this. I don't know, Martin, have you seen this?
I've seen extremes of yes and no in this. I've seen some extremes where people are really grateful to have a job and an income. So people the turnover has been much lower, but I've also seen the other end of the spectrum where agents' stress and the position they find themselves in has become so difficult that the turnover has been higher. So yes, again, it varies considerably depending on the organisation, the services it provides, and customers.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, and it'll be interesting to see. I know a lot of contact centers were struggling with their recruitment pools before the pandemic, so it'll be interesting to see how that's affected that generally. We have a tip now in from Gurav, who says the majority of contact center agents are working on unexciting and monotonous tickets like password resets and how-to queries. Contact centers should see COVID-19 as an opportunity to shift left these easy targets through automation, self-help, and user adoption strategies. This will not only improve user experience, but it also help the right growth of contact center agents. I'm sure you go along with this one, Stuart.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in our experience, 30% of calls, according to some research, were people just calling to check things that they already knew. And equally, I think a lot of calls are very just low value transactional inquiries, which could be solved pretty much straight away without necessarily needing to bother a really highly valued agent to do that. So I think there's a huge opportunity, to right size, to shift left. I think, well, I really like that term, to shift left and automate some of those really basic things, and allow agents to do what they're brilliant at, which is focus on delivering great customer service and solving those really complex inquiries.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think it links well to a point that Martin made in his presentation about how the skill set of the future advisor will change once automation and self-service is taking up more of these contacts. Yes, a very interesting tip there from Gaurav. And one final tip now in from Alexander is that working from home does not necessarily mean social isolation. Offer online meetings for socializing, to share digital coffee and chit chat. I think that's a nice place to end it for today. But if you could, in the chat room, just leave us in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? Again, we'd really like to hear your feedback. Yes, it'd be great if you could do that. We also have time for our winning tip, and the bottle of champagne or box of chocolates will be going to Brittany, who says, working from home isn't for everyone. Some individuals require that social interaction. I think it would be great to offer employees to work on site some days and off site some days, some other days, to balance our new norm. I think that's nice, and I think it links well to the points today made about the future of hybrid working very well. So again, also we have another opportunity for us to grab some feedback. If you could just fill in the post-webinar survey when you come off the webinar, that would be great. It's only 4 questions long, but yeah, it would be really great to hear your thoughts. And once again, you can watch the replay and the slides by going to www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. That'll be available this afternoon, and yeah, really great place to catch up on everything that you've heard today. We have more webinars in the future, so look over those on our registration page. But now it's just my last chance to thank both of our speakers for joining us today. So thanks, Martin, for being part of today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Charlie. And once again, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Excellent. And thanks to you, Stuart.
Likewise, really great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. 2 great presentations there, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, and bye for now.